Ah, all right. All right. All right. Guys, how are we doing tonight? Time to have a whoa. Time to have a beverage and talk a little bit about neck through guitars tonight. Thanks for joining me, you guys, because I'm looking for your not only questions, but I'm because what I'm doing right now, I'm in the middle of writing the uh, the accompanying workbook for the inaugural neck through workshop. Um, so I kind of want to like I know what I need to write down, but if there are any questions that you guys can help me with, questions that you have, or maybe stuff that I haven't thought about, please let me know. And we'll go as long as we need to, and or until we run out of beer. And so yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I'm really excited about. Well, I'm excited one to be doing this with you guys because um, we actually started filming a video earlier this week, and some stuff happened and we were unable to finish it, and it was like, well, what do we do for Sunday's video? So we had to punt and go live, which I'm okay with. I hope you guys are okay with that too. um, and I'm also excited to be coming to you live from the Speakeasy, and anyone who comes to one of our workshops will probably get an invite to um, the Speakeasy, and will probably get an invite to the Upright Lounge. But anyway, this is a cool place that to be doing a live stream from. So this is the very first one, and I think it's super cool. So anyone, like I said, if you're on the fence about coming to a workshop and you're like, gosh, if there was only some like cool bar I could go to when I was when I was there, then I would definitely do it. Well, then maybe you'll get an invitation to the Speakeasy. Um, by the way, the secret phrase to get in is from Red Dawn, and it's John has a long mustache. And if they answer with the chair is against the wall, then you get to come in. Anyway, now don't just go blabbing that, you know what I mean? So anyhow, so yeah, we're here to talk about neck through guitars because Chris and I are offering neck through guitar workshops this year. Neck through. We are offering several neck through guitar workshops this year, and I'm actually very excited. The inaugural workshop, we have four people doing neck throughs with us, and then we have the other two guys are doing carve tops. But three of the guys are doing 63 Firebird inspired builds, and one of the guys is doing a BC Rich. So lots of classic neck through stuff there. But there are some other areas where I think that a neck through design for an instrument could be really neat and could be very um, uh, an excellent way to build a classic guitar that maybe isn't necessarily always neck through. But we're going to talk about that tonight, and yeah, I want to. Yeah, so Doc is here. He knows that you should not go backward on the beloved pin router. Loring Court sent me an email last night or night before last about scarf joints on headstocks for neck throughs, and what my thoughts are on that. And guys, if you have any questions or stuff, super chats are enabled, but you don't need to super chat me. Just put a bunch of question marks like we do in the Thursday live streams, and I'll try to find them all. But it's just me tonight, so I might miss stuff. But yeah. Um, so yeah, scarf jointing a neck for as you guys might know, I'm not a big fan um, of scarf joints, not because I don't like them, or not because I don't think that they're effective. I just don't do them. I used to do scarf joints fairly exclusively, and I just kind of stopped. So Loring's question was, um, if you can imagine the height of the material that you would need to use, you need to have it be very wide, and you need to have it be fairly thick, and it'd have to be very tall too, to accommodate, an angled headstock. You could probably get away with, especially if you've got like, like a bridge that's angled. I'm sorry, if you have a bridge that necessitates an angle away from the fretboard, you've got a thickness issue there, and then you add enough meat to do an angled headstock, and it becomes a pretty big chunk of wood, and let's face it, you're going to waste a lot of it. So yeah, I think that scarf joints are neat. And he sent me a picture of a guitar with lots and lots of glue ups and laminates and laminations, and like it was Purple Heart and Maple, I think. I'm pretty sure this was like a Grateful Dead replica guitar. Those guys were always into fancy woods, or even modulus graphite and things like that. But wood was a cool thing, and lots of laminations were something that was a pretty standard thing on some of those Grateful Dead guitars that are famous. And yeah, and I think that's cool. I would call that I would probably call that hippie wood, but definitely a neat way to do something very visually striking. You could make the case that it is additionally structurally more stable than a one or two piece neck, um, provided it's done right. And yeah, so I think that scarf joints would be a cool thing to do. And of course, you could do like on those Gibson Firebirds I was showing you guys the other day, 9-piece laminate and a bunch of scarf joints and stuff. You could have all kinds of crazy glue joints. You probably have more glue than wood at some point. Um, so yeah, what do I think of them? I think they're neat, and I think they're also fairly classic. There's something about neck through guitars and multiple laminations that go hand in hand, um, sort of like how uh, a Fender Stratocaster with neck through is not something that's traditional. But generally speaking, I think it's not just accepted, but also encouraged to do lots of laminations on a neck through. Now, I personally like the way neck throughs look with just straight maple running through the center. Or frankly, I think that if you wanted to paint a neck through, that'd be fine too. So, um, but yeah, I think that maybe sometimes the laminations just take extra time, and that's, well, not sometimes, all the time, but that's the only downside to those. Um, okay, so people have been asking me too about offsets a lot. Big Kahuna offset V with a syn Sinster headstock, then Gas Monkey green stripes over charcoal metallic base. That's not really a question, but yeah, that'd be cool. Um, Brad says this is a good setup, but Matt needs some light on the far side of his face. I'll just move over to this side, Brad, and then you can. Yeah, it's Brad. We're in the Speakeasy tonight, and the lighting is what it is. Um, uh, Scotsman says that he keeps all of his offcuts and then glues them together to make cavity covers, etc. Also cool. Um, SS says that he thinks I should populate this bar behind him with beautiful women that he uses. And yeah, we don't. There's not. I'm the only one here tonight, so. But you never know. There's all kinds of good stuff. Doc and Chris are talking about Buick, so yeah. Um, mm, Brad is searching for this on Amazon, or I don't know. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to neck throughs, and you guys can just chat amongst yourself. Oh, here was one. Scotsman asks, Matt, if you're doing an angled neck on a neck through, how do you smooth the top of the body off? Pin router. Well, that's a great question, and in fact, that's something that I've been doing a bunch of experimenting with. lately. As you know, I have a headstock sign plate that makes my does all my headstocks for me. So I clamp a neck into this jig and run it under the pin router, and it imparts that perfect 7-degree angle for me. A neck through certainly fits on that sign plate. I've been testing it. It's just you've got a lot more neck dangling off the other end. So it's not a big deal. You just gotta have kind of be aware of that. Another way that you could go would be to uh, draw that angle out on just draw it on your blank. Everything, of course, you have to keep everything square for as long as you can, but you can go ahead and draw that angle out, rough cut it on the bandsaw, and get real close. And if you get really close, I don't mean like close to the line, but I mean equidistant to the line. um, then you can either sand that flat on like if you have a sander, that an edge sander, you can do that. But not everybody has an edge sander. But a lot of people have jointers. And what you can do, and in fact, what I often do, is I run everything over the jointer to flatten everything out. Um, so that's what we've been doing a bunch. And I've got a line on some of Steve's new templates that he's got for neck through stuff, and he and I are working on some designs. We've got one that I think shows a lot of promise, and it's a way to do both your headstock angle and your body brake angle, say for a two pneumatic bridge. I want to talk more about bridges too. A way to do that on a router table. Um, so I actually think, like I said, it has a lot of promise, a lot of merit. One of the neat things about it is you still are going to draw a line that you cut out with the bandsaw, say. But if your line's a little bit off, you can run it. It's not a big deal. So if you imagine if your line gets off and you run it across the joiner, you're not guaranteed that you're going to have any degree of accuracy if your bandsaw cut is kind of sucky. So that's something you gotta keep in mind. But that would be a way to do that. Scotsman, like I said, the joiner is a great way to do that, provided you have a joiner. If you have a sign plate and a pin router, another great way. Still another way to do that would be one of the jigs like Steve has. So this kind of comes back to Loring's question about scarf joints. If you have one of Steve's scarf jointing jigs, you could just do that, and that could just become the face of your headstock, say. I'm trying to convince Steve to make one for the body, so that you can. It's like, imagine like it's a route, just a regular hand router with an enlarged base, and you can run that down a sled and impart that 2.5 or whatever degree angle that is, that will allow you to use, um, say, a two pneumatic bridge. So okay, all right, lots of good stuff here. I think I'm missing some, so I'm going to have to go back here. There's some paint talk. Yeah, so Loring was talking about the Jerry Garcia's Wolf guitar. So is that what that was, Loring? It looked very Grateful Dead like it to me. But yeah, I guess Loring was saying that he sold those guitars for a lot of money and they all sold out right away. So Butch Landry, what if the neck twists? Well, that's kind of the bummer part about any neck that is attached with a way other than bolts and screws. So John Entwistle actually was famous for having a Gibson Thunderbird with a Fender neck. I can't remember if it was a jazz bass or a precision bass neck, but I think what happened, and you guys probably know better than I do, neck was damaged, neck was warped, neck was twisted, neck was something. And rather than repair it, he just hogged out a neck pocket and bolted a Fender neck into there, which is another cool thing that guys have. I've seen guys do that. They don't start with a Thunderbird and wait for the neck to get damaged, or hope that the neck gets damaged and then route it. They just start with the idea of making a Firebird, or I'm sorry, a Thunderbird body with a P bass or jazz bass neck. And you could do that the same thing with any neck through. You could do it with a Les Paul if you're in the Les Paul neck, got got boogered up. You could hack the neck off and route up neck pocket and put a different neck on there. Obviously, scale length is going to be an issue, but yeah. Um, um, let's see, Chris painting. Doc wants to know, for a neck through with a hip shot bridge, is the angle of the body portion relative to the neck zero, or does it have to be angled like a tune-o-matic? Okay. One of the things that I've been writing about for, like I said, for the workbook, Doc, is when building a neck through, or rather when designing a neck through, you have got to know exactly what bridge you're going to use, because you can't shim it, you can't change it, you can't work the neck angle a little more if you get it wrong. So generally speaking, when we make neck throughs, of course, we use the 7-degree headstock. You could do a fender headstock, or you could do 17 or 14 or whatever headstock angle turns you on. So that there's an angle there. Then you have the other angle, which the fretboard is going to be glued to. And then finally, you have a third angle, which is where the bridge is in relation to the fretboard. Now, if you're using a tune-o-matic or a Gibson style bridge, one of the things that you need to compensate for is the height of the bridge is usually about 5/8 of an inch from the top of the fret. If you kind of imagine it extending out to the scale point, the where the bridge will go, and the top of the frets and the top of the guitar, the distance to that imaginary line needs to be about 5/8 of an inch. And you can probably get away with a little less, and you can probably get away with a little more. What you don't want to do is you don't want to hack a big chunk out of it, and then your pickups are 5/8 of an inch from stuff. So when using a tune-o-matic, you need about 5/8. But if you're using a Hipshot style or a hardtail bridge, you can get away with a lot less. Usually about 3/8 is all you need. And in that instance, I would not even bother with an angle. What I would do instead is I would make it look kind of like if you look at a Strat or a Telly, and you look at it from the side and go, all right, here's my fretboard is up here, and then there's a step, and it's about 3/8 from the top of the fret to the top of the guitar body, and it goes all the way. It's parallel, and you just use whatever bridge you would use for a Strat or something like that. Now, if you are using a Floyd and you're planning on recessing it, and Sean, if you're watching, if you're planning on recessing the Floyd, and frankly, why wouldn't you? Unless you want to have like that kind of nostalgic kind of thing, like Phil McKnight is doing right now, which is cool. But if you're recessing the Floyd, then no big shake. You just you can have even less angle, so you can almost have. There's Mila. You can almost have you can just basically have a flat plane, attach your fretboard to it, and then recess your Floyd to whatever depth you need to make that work. But I can't stress this enough, guys. You, at the very, very least, have to know exactly which bridge you are going to use. And it's even better if you actually have the bridge in your hot little hand and you can measure it as you go. Okay. All right. Chris, if you're watching, maybe you and Richard can talk about paint and stain. We're not really going to talk about paint today, but yeah. Doug Santaniello is here. How you doing, Doug? Okay. I saw one and then I just missed it. Dang it. Michael asks, what is your favorite neck through, and what are your thoughts on Steve's Maximum Guitar Works 63 Phoenix set? Okay. I think this is a loaded question because Michael and Steve work together. Okay, so two-part question here. What is my favorite neck through? I think my favorite neck through is probably a guitar that didn't exist for many, many years, but always should have, and that would be the 61 Les Paul, which, as you guys all know, is what we call the SG now. It is my understanding that guitar was supposed to be a neck through. And if you've ever seen the neck joint on an SG, you know why it would have been really, really neat if that guitar had originally been a neck through. So, and I have a soft spot in my heart for SGs, and you guys saw the guitar that I was goofing around with on Friday was in fact an SG with a neck through neck. Um, so it's a way to get one of the neat things about the SG is the body joins the fretboard at like the 22nd fret. So you don't have a lot of meat there. And if the guitar neck is neck through, then it doesn't matter. Not that the neck that is glued in the classic Gibson way um, is a big deal, but it could be stronger. And that might be one of those things, is the juice worth the squeeze? Actually, Gibson thought that the juice was worth the squeeze for a little while. They actually started making neck through SGs. And I don't know if they still do, but for a while you could get them. And I think that would be a really cool, I think that would probably be one of my favorite neck throughs. I think one of my other favorite neck throughs that actually did exist would be anything from the late 70s that was made by BC Rich. The Yamaha SG was a neck through. I love those. That's that Carlos Santana one with the symmetrical double cutaway. Super cool guitars. Yeah, so those would probably be my favorite. I've always liked the Firebird, and I've always liked the Thunderbird, but I think so that the non-reverse Firebird is one of my favorites. But in answer to your other question, what do I think of Steve's 63 Phoenix template set? I think that Steve put a lot of work into that, and the accuracy on that stuff is, of course, absolutely what you expect from Steve. So good template set. I don't know if I've not actually used it enough to say this is great. It's going to work every time. I don't see why it wouldn't. But I can't really speak to it. I've been working with the template set that Steve brought us, and trying to figure out a handful of things that he asked me about. Some of the template set I think could be simplified. Okay, and what I mean by that is I don't know if the neck angle is going to be something that's going to work with every single bridge. So, for example, like I said, Steve's template set is superbly accurate, which means that if you're using a Goto style bridge, Goto style tune-o-matic or Nashville style tune-o-matic, it's not going to work because it doesn't have enough neck angle. He made it exactly for the 63 Firebird bridge, which is a little bit shorter than the Nashville tune-o-matic. Want to know how I know? Because Dave Chenzoff sent Steve the bridge, and it works awesome. So yeah, and I would never have thought that. You could always recess the tune-o-matic. That's 100% acceptable, I think. And that, in fact, I think it actually looks cool. So the other potential downside to the 63 Phoenix template set, and it's not a downside as much as it's just a limiting factor, is all it does is that. So if all you're doing is Firebird shaped guitars, then it's perfect. But if you ever decide, you know what, I want to do a BC Rich Eagle, or I want to make an SG, some of the stuff isn't going to work, obviously, right? So I'm going to attempt to convince Steve to work on a fit all version of his neck through template. And the reason I'm doing that is because of very selfish reasons. That's what I'm going to need for the workshop, the neck through workshop. So yeah, so I'm still working with the templates. I really like them. I hope that you guys check them out. And if you sign up for the $400 guitar building challenge, you'll save $100 on the template set. And that template set that's not an inexpensive one. But if you want to build a Firebird, guys, I know for a fact that's the template set to get. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. I'm looking for question marks. I'm looking. Richard wants to know, can you put a truss rod through neck? Yeah, absolutely. What you absolutely can. use a truss rod and stiffening rods and any other stuff that you would in a regular neck, and I advise you to do so. Grudgemeyer, on the multi-lam of different woods, would the headstock plate be good, or let the multi-lam show? Well, that's certainly an aesthetic question. I think that if you're going to go through the trouble of multiple laminations and you get them really, really, really nice, you do an excellent job with the laminations, you should show that stuff off. And just me personally talking, I think that dark wood and light wood contrasting looks cooler than woods that are more subtly different. So, like, for example, again, I think that the Firebird is a classic example. Mahogany and walnut, it's 9 pieces, and you can't really see it from a distance. Whereas, like the BC Rich stuff, it's got the maple with, with stringers and koa or whatever, and you can see all the laminations, and I think that's cool. And the picture that Loring sent me, I guess it's Jerry Garcia's Wolf guitar. It looks to be, I don't know if it is, but it looks to be maple and purple heart, and that, yeah, you can see that a mile away. So adding those laminations, Rick Turner on his Model 1s, maple and purple heart, and they're all kinds of laminations, and I wouldn't be one bit surprised if Rick Turner did a bunch of work on that or somebody who knew Rick Turner didn't do a bunch of work on that Jerry Garcia guitar. Rick used to work at Alembic, and they were pretty much pioneers in that kind of thing. So yeah, I would show it off, man. Absolutely show it off. That's just me though. Who makes that 80s crackle paint? I have no idea. Let's see. I'm looking for all the. I think I missed a bunch of stuff here, guys. Daryl wants to know: is the progression to establish the body length? Is the progression to establish the body length than the neck length and the headstock length? Yeah, you got to have all that stuff. I mean, I know that, but and give yourself a little bit more room. So what we've been using is a 45-inch long body blank. I'm sorry, neck through blank. That should be more than good enough to give you almost any headstock you are going to want to use. Obviously, you might have to glue some stuff on to get the shape, get it to fit on there, and more or less a long body. So, like I said, that's Steve came up with that 45-inch length, and that worked really great for the Firebird, which is a long guitar. If you went with a full 4-foot neck blank and kind of chased it from there, that would be a way to go too. But remember, guys, wood is expensive. If Tommy Kaloje is watching, I should just drink this beer because he's always like, Matt just sips on it. So okay, all right. Looking for some questions here. Doc says the bridge that I sent Steve is a Tone Pros. Hopefully that one works. Doc, we are going to make it work even if it doesn't. And Tone Pros makes a hell of a nice bridge too. Paul Needs asks, the SG is perfect for neck through, and I too have a soft spot for the 62 Les Paul, but even more so the Les Paul Jr. SG shape. Do you reckon it's possible to build one neck through with an 8-quarter blank? No, I don't think that I think if you're talking about a neck blank, I think you're going to need a little more than that. You're going to be close. You're going to be really close. It's going to depend on the bridge that you use. But I don't think you're going to have enough. Now, this brings me around to something that I'm also including in the workbook, which is really just an excerpt from the other workbooks, which is you have to have a full-size drawing. And not because you don't know how to build a guitar, and not because you don't know what your guitar is going to look like, but there's something about the act of physically drawing, even if you're using templates, there's something about the act of physically drawing something out on a piece of paper and starting to, look at what's happening and start to look at the relationship of angles and things and go, I can see it right here, and I can just measure what it is. I'm not guessing. You have to have a full-size drawing. And I used to, I'm the worst offender at this because I do stuff without full size drawings all the time. And I always regret it when I don't. But taking the time to have a full size plan made that you made, not like a blueprint that you went out and bought, but something that, even if you do that, make a full size drawing because it will hopefully get your mind going and you'll go, oh, you know what? This is the steps I need to do this in. So yeah, absolutely, positively have that stuff drawn out. And your patience will be rewarded. It's also nice to be able to go, all right, what's the next thing that I do? I'm going to go back and go to my full size drawing and look that stuff up. So yeah, full size drawing and have the bridge in your hand. All right. TV Party says makes me consider whether using graphite stiffening rods might be more advantageous for neck through builds. I would say it absolutely would be. There's no downside to using graphite or carbon fiber or a material like that to stiffen a neck and to work in conjunction with an adjustable truss rod. There's no downside. We start to use steel. There's certainly the only downside as far as I can consider when using steel is weight. I guess the downside to carbon fiber or graphite is cost. I mean that's a thing, but I don't believe that there's one downside to that. There will be traditionalists among us who say the more wood that you remove, the worse tone you will have. I don't know what that means. It's hard to quantify that in any kind of, but I think you could say the more wood you remove and replace with something that is inert and inherently stable is actually you can actually make a case for that. That's not just I hear a difference. And I'm not saying that you can't hear a difference. I can't, but that's a story for another time, isn't it? All right, I'm looking. Bobby Dill wants to know, a drawing is the best way to catch a mistake. Ask me how I know. Yeah, and isn't it cool to catch those mistakes when they're on paper and easy to erase? It's better to do that than to cut something out and then go, oh crap, what do I do now? When I was making the SG neck through, I was using Steve's very excellent and wonderful Firebird templates. And if I would have drawn it out, I would have known that, oh yeah, I need to, I'm not going to be able to use this one of the pieces in his templates that I was unable to use. Not Steve's fault, my fault for not looking at it, not drawing it out. Yeah, having instructions and following them are two very different things, aren't they? All right. Doc says full-size drawing and a list of the order of operations and procedures. Then you can mark it off as you go. For those like me who have a crapshoot, for those like me that have a crap short-term memory, yeah. Having a plan and then working your plan, planning your work and working your plan, right? It's like your junior high shop teacher used to always say. I hope that your junior high shop teacher said that to you. If you don't have a drawing, it makes life considerably harder. And refer back to it all the time. Anyone who's been to one of my workshops knows that once we started doing, like, even if you're building a telly, everyone does a full-size drawing. And it makes life a little bit easier. And hopefully you avoid some of those mistakes. It just reminds you to do simple stuff. And then you don't make those easy mistakes to make. But if you make them, you feel like a bonehead. So having a plan, I cannot stress enough that if you have a plan that you drew and you have the bridge in your hand, you have a higher likelihood of success. All right. Scotsman says he hasn't done a drawing yet and he's made a bunch of mistakes. Well, there you go. Give the drawing a try and see what you think. Coney Island Guitar says he always does full-size drawings. and he does them on the computer in Adobe Illustrator. You know what? And I think that's cool, but there's something about putting pen to paper that is a very, it's good for me. I missed one here. Mike Ivy says the Speakeasy is looking very cool. It's a great idea for a Q&A session. Great. Thank you, Mike. That is very kind of you. My dog is upset though. Order of operations. Oh yes, please don't see any of the detailed modern ones in books, or at least none that I've found. I also have such, yeah, sometimes, and that's kind of the whole thing about making any guitar, whether it's a neck through or a bolt on or a cigar box. Having the ability to just kind of thinking several steps ahead, so that you're you don't start cutting pieces off and then go, oh man, you know what? If I wouldn't have cut that off, I could have done this. Yeah. So having an order of operations is absolutely a good thing. Bryant Crawford asks, if you have a drawing, you can figure out where you are better and less likely to lose your place. Absolutely. Fat Philosopher asks, is it possible to put carbon rods in the thinner D profile necks? I don't see why not. You might have to change the dimensions of the carbon fiber rods, but you may not. Doc says he loves the wall art behind me. Thank you, Doc. That's actually the mirror, and the wall art is over there. Let's see. September 8th. I don't know what that means. Okay. All right. So guys, if you have any more questions, we can probably start wrapping this up. This one, Doc. Yeah, absolutely. That's actually JJJ's deluxe, and that's actually taken at his house. But when you come out next time, Doc, you will see you'll get an invitation to the Speakeasy, and you'll get to see what it's like down here. Yes, he is talking about the Challenger and the shot glass. So let's talk a little bit about, before we wrap this up, what are the advantages? We've talked about some of the disadvantages of neck throughs. One, you have to plan them out particularly well, because once you get them started, you can't shim the neck, and same with a set neck. Once it's glued in, you can't change it, but you can kind of shim it a little bit if you need to. But neck through, you certainly can. So what happens if your neck goes wonky on you? Well, yeah. There's nothing you can do. So, but there are some advantages to using neck through design. One of them is like I said, there's no neck joint, so you don't have to have this tongue sticking out that the neck gets bolted to. If access to the upper fret registry is something that's important to you, then happy meal, and you should use a neck through. If you just don't have a whole lot of real estate to attach your neck, then a neck through is a great place to start your. You should consider neck through design. If you like the aesthetics of the neck through feature, then yeah, absolutely, you should go with the neck through design. There are people that say, now that we're getting into the intangible things now, there are people and builders and players who say they can hear a difference. The neck is more stable. The pickup at the, putting a specific pickup in a specific location on a neck through sounds different. I don't know about all that, but from the stability standpoint, and if you make your design simple enough, when you go to make your neck through neck, you're really just making a bigger neck with a longer heel, and then you happen to be gluing wings to it. It is possible to use more wood or less wood with a neck through design, depending on what your how many laminations you have. But yeah, I think that's the other thing is it's sort of like we talked about with Doc and Dave and Doug. Every 63 Firebird is a neck through. Not all neck throughs are 63 Firebirds. So there's ways to to do that. Lots of laminations or very few, and of course the Firebird had 9, and then there's some of the Olympics had who knows how many. So yeah, I think having laminations is really neat, and laminations generally, when done correctly, give you a increase um, in stability of the piece. So again, not every guitar that's a neck through is going to have a bunch of laminates, but every guitar with a bunch of laminates, whether it's neck through or not, is going to have a stability edge. So okay. Sean asks, if I wanted a specific fretboard material, could I ship it to you? Yes, Sean, you absolutely can and should. Lauren Court says, Brad Guitar Miller asks, not a neck through question, but what's the difference between a build a carved top class and build a Les Paul class? That's a great question, Lauren and Brad. Build a carved top is just a woodworking workshop, and it's 5 days. If you want to add the 2-day paint extension, you can. Build a Les Paul it's a one-time deal. We're only doing it in December this year, and it's it includes everything except pickups. So you show up on Monday with 2 humbuckers or 2 P90s or whatever pickups you want to put in this thing, and you walk out on the following Monday or Sunday with a complete guitar that's strung up and ready to go. So we include all the lumber, all the binding, all the truss rod, all the frets, all the tuners, all the electronics, CTS. It's basically a wiring rig that we get. CTS pots, switchcraft switch, jack, that sort of thing. We include strap buttons, paint, what else? Inlay, all that stuff. So it's an all-encompassing. The Build a Classic Les Paul is an all-encompassing 7-day workshop, whereas Build a Carved Top is you build a Les Paul, but it's just the woodworking part. If you want to add a 2-day paint extension, you certainly can. But there's no finishing or like putting it together, assembly day, anything like that. So I'm excited about that. One of the questions that you guys might be having is, why did you lump Les Paul, build a classic carved top and build a classic neck through together into one class? And I just kind of goofed that up. I actually posted them both in, I don't know, let's say May, and some people signed up for the May one, and they're like, well, I want to build so I had to do all of them like that. So however, we have added another neck through workshop, which I think is just the neck through one. So I think that's going to be in, I can't remember what month it is, but if you look on the website and you want to do one of the neck through ones, Gary Taft signed up for that one, and a couple other guys signed up for it. We just added it on Friday. It's going to be really cool, and it's going to be just neck through stuff. So yeah, I love the idea of these neck through ones. I think they're going to be super cool. Okay. Message still. Looks like we have a deleted message or two in the okay, that's fun. All right, cool. Well, guys, I think we're gonna go ahead and call this. Let's go ahead and call it. I'm done. I'm gonna go have some dinner, and I look forward to seeing you guys later on this week for more reveals and more Q&As and more chatting and things. So thanks for hanging out with me, you guys. Hope you guys have a great week. Jim and I are actually off to Steve's on tomorrow morning. That should be pretty fun. I don't know if there's going to be a video, but maybe we'll take some pictures while we're out there. And then, of course, we'll be back with more cool stuff to show you this week. And hopefully we will have a full-length feature video for you next Sunday. So until then, guys, have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. If you're so smart, start your own YouTube channel, blah, blah, blah. All right. Take care, everybody.